You've prayed the prayer. You've said the words, "I trust you," God, out loud, in the car, on your knees, at midnight. And tonight you're staring at the ceiling again, running the same fear through your mind for the fourth time, waiting for it to finally land different. You believe he's real? You believe he's good? So why does your chest still tighten when the phone buzzes? Why does your mind still spiral the second it goes quiet? You're not lying when you say you trust him, but somewhere between your mouth and your nervous system, something is getting lost, and you've started to wonder if maybe your faith just isn't working the way everyone else's seems to. So here's the question underneath all of it. What actually changes when trusting God stops being something you say and becomes something your whole body finally believes? You have prayed about it more times than you can count. You have said the words, "I trust you," God, out loud, in the car, in the shower, on your knees beside your bed at midnight when the house was quiet and your mind was not. You have read the verses about not being anxious. You have nodded along in church when the pastor talked about casting your cares on him because he cares for you. You have even told other people with a steady voice that they should trust God more. And yet here you are again tonight, staring at the ceiling, running the same scenario through your mind for the fourth time, as if replaying it one more time might finally produce a different outcome. The job you might lose, the relationship that feels uncertain, the diagnosis you are waiting on, the decision you cannot make because every option feels like a cliff edge. You believe God is real. You believe He is good. So why does your body still react like none of that is true? Why does your chest still tighten when your phone buzzes with an unfamiliar number? Why does your mind still spiral into worst-case scenarios the moment you have a quiet moment to think? This is the quiet exhaustion nobody talks about in church. Not the dramatic crisis of faith, not the public unraveling, but the slow, private weariness of saying you trust God while your hands are still clenched around every detail of your life. You are not lying when you say you trust Him. You are not faking it. But somewhere between your mouth and your nervous system, something is getting lost in translation. Your spirit says one thing, your body says another, and you are left standing in the gap between the two, wondering which one is telling the truth about you. Maybe you have started to wonder if your faith is even working. You see other believers who seem to carry such a calm assurance, and you compare your own racing thoughts to their apparent peace, and you come away feeling like you are doing something wrong, like there is a switch other people have found that you have not. Like maybe you do not trust God as much as you thought you did, because if you really did, surely you would not feel this anxious. Surely you would not lie awake doing mental math on outcomes you cannot control. Surely the dread would not still be there, humming quietly in the background of your days like a radio station you cannot quite turn off. Here is the question underneath all of it, the one you might not have put into words yet, but that has been shaping so much of your inner life. What actually changes when trusting God becomes real? Not just something you say, but something your whole being believes. Is there a difference between confessing trust and living trust? And if there is, where is that difference supposed to show up? In your sleep, in your shoulders, in the way you read a text message from your boss, in the way you sit in a waiting room. You want to know not just that you should trust God, you already know that. You have known that since you were a child in a pew somewhere. What you want to know is what trusting Him is actually supposed to do to you. What is it supposed to change? Because right now, if you are honest, it does not feel like it is changing much of anything. You might have started to notice a pattern. You pray about something, and for a few hours, maybe even a few days, there is a strange lightness. But then the silence sets in. No answer, no clear sign, no shift in circumstances. And slowly, the weight creeps back in, heavier this time, because now there is the added frustration of having tried to let go and feeling like it did not work. So you pick the burden back up, because at least when you are holding it yourself, you feel like you are doing something. At least the white-knuckled grip gives you the illusion of control, even when you know, intellectually, that you never had control to begin with. This is the strange, lonely place so many people of faith find themselves in. Not unbelief, not rebellion, just a tired, sincere faith that has not yet found its way from the mind down into the bones. You believe the right things. You say the right prayers. But there is a gap, and that gap is where the anxiety lives, where the overthinking lies, where the low hum of dread about tomorrow lives. And nobody warned you that this gap could exist. Nobody told you that you could believe in God with your whole mind and still feel completely ungoverned by that belief in your actual lived, breathing moments. So tonight, or whenever you are watching this, in whatever quiet moment you have stolen to sit with these questions, I want to gently suggest something to you. The problem is not that your faith is fake. The problem is not that you trust God less than you think you do. The problem might be something else entirely. Something far more hopeful than the conclusion you have probably already drawn about yourself. What if trust was never meant to be a feeling that arrives and stays, like a permanent emotional state you either achieve or fail to achieve? What if you have been measuring something the wrong way, using the wrong instrument, and that is why it has felt so elusive? There is something true here that has not yet been fully said, something that, once you understand it, will not just inform your mind, but will start to reach into the very places that have felt so untouched by faith until now. The gap you feel between belief and feeling is real, but it does not mean what you think it means. And the way forward is not to try harder to feel something you cannot manufacture. It is something else, something quieter. Something that starts not in your emotions, but somewhere you have not been looking. We are going to walk through that together, slowly, honestly, because you deserve more than another reminder to just trust God. You deserve to understand what that actually means, and what it is supposed to do once it becomes real. Let's start by naming the misunderstanding that has probably been shaping your inner life for years without you ever noticing it. Somewhere along the way, you absorbed the idea that trust is a feeling, that it is an emotional state, like calm or joy or peace, something that either washes over you or doesn't. And because you have built your definition of trust around a feeling, you have spent years measuring your faith by your nervous system instead of by your posture. Every time fear shows up in your body, you interpret it as evidence that your trust is failing. Every time your mind spirals, you read it as proof that your faith is weak. But feelings and faith are not the same instrument, and they were never meant to be. Think about what is actually happening inside you in those anxious moments. Your mind, the part of you that processes Scripture, that affirms God's character, that genuinely believes He is good and faithful, is saying one thing. Your body, the part of you wired by years of self-protection, past wounds, and the simple biology of being human, is saying another. This is not a contradiction in your faith. This is the basic reality of being a person who has a spirit and also has a nervous system. The mind can hold deep conviction about who God is, while the body still reacts the way bodies react to uncertainty. That is not spiritual failure. That is what it means to be human and growing. The misunderstanding becomes painful because you start treating your anxious feelings as a verdict on your spiritual condition. You mistake the absence of peace for the absence of faith. But peace was never meant to be the proof of trust. It is often the result of trust, and results take time to surface, sometimes far more time than we expect. If you wait for the feeling of peace before you believe your trust is real, you will spend your whole life waiting for evidence that may not show up on the timeline you have set for it. So if trust is not primarily a feeling, what is it? Here is where the biblical perspective offers something different than what most of us were taught growing up. Scripture does not describe trust mainly as an emotional surrender that happens once, in a dramatic moment, after which you simply feel different forever. It describes trust as something closer to a posture, something practiced and renewed, day by day, sometimes moment by moment. There is a reason the language used is about the mind being renewed and transformed, rather than the mind being instantly fixed. Renewal implies repetition. It implies that trust is not a single decision you make and then never have to revisit. It is closer to a direction you keep choosing to face, especially in the moments when your feelings are pulling you towards something else entirely. This means God is not asking you to arrive at a permanent state of certainty before He will call your trust real. He is asking for direction. He is asking what you do with your thoughts in the moment. Fear rises, not whether fear rises at all. This is such a relieving distinction, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. Fear rising is not the opposite of trust. What you do in response to that rising fear is where trust actually lives. Do you spiral further into the scenario your mind is constructing, feeding it more detail, more dread, more imagined outcomes? Or do you notice the fear, acknowledge it honestly, and then make a small, deliberate choice to turn your attention back toward what you know to be true about God, even while the fear is still present in your body? This is what trust actually looks like in practice, and it looks far less dramatic than you probably imagined. It is not the absence of anxious thoughts. It is the quiet, repeated act of catching those thoughts and redirecting them, even imperfectly, even without an immediate feeling of relief. It might look like noticing you are spiraling about a conversation that has not happened yet, and instead of letting the spiral continue uninterrupted, gently saying to yourself, "This is fear talking, not truth," and choosing to redirect your attention, even for 30 seconds. It might look like praying honestly, "I don't feel like I trust you right now, but I am choosing to anyway," and recognizing that this sentence, as conflicted as it sounds, might be one of the most faith-filled things you say all day. Here is a practical way to begin shifting this pattern. The next time you notice fear rising, whether it is a tightness in your chest or a thought looping in your mind, try not to immediately judge yourself for having the feeling. Instead, simply name what is happening. Say, internally, or even out loud if you are alone, "This is anxiety rising, and I am noticing it." Then ask yourself one small question. What is one true thing about God that I know, even if I don't feel it right now? You do not need a long theological answer. It can be as simple as, "He has been faithful before," or "He knows what I am facing," or "I am not alone in this." The point is not to instantly erase the fear. The point is to practice the redirection over and over, because that redirection, repeated daily, is what actually constitutes trust, far more than any singular emotional breakthrough. There is real relief available here. If you let it land, you are not failing every time you feel afraid. You have not lost your faith every time your mind spirals before you catch it. The absence of peace in a given moment is not a referendum on the presence of your faith. What matters is the smaller, quieter pattern building underneath the surface. The pattern of returning your mind to truth again and again, even when it does not feel triumphant, even when nobody sees it, even when you are doing it through gritted teeth at 2 in the morning. But this raises a deeper question, one that we have to sit with honestly before moving forward. If trust is not a feeling, but a returning, a posture practiced day after day, then what is it actually built from? What is the raw material underneath this practice? Because something has to change for this redirection to start happening more naturally, for it to stop feeling like such an exhausting battle every single time. There is a shift that happens deeper than behavior, a shift in the mind itself, and that shift is where we are headed next. There is a shift that begins to happen in the mind. Once trust moves from being a single decision into becoming a practiced posture, and it is not the shift you might expect. You might assume that spiritual maturity means eventually reaching a place where anxious thoughts stop showing up altogether, where the mind becomes a calm, untroubled space, free of the noise that has plagued it for years. But that is not actually what happens, and it is important to release that expectation now, because chasing an empty mind will only set you up for more discouragement. What actually happens is different, and in some ways, more realistic and more hopeful. The mind does not become empty, it becomes quieter. Not because the thoughts stop coming, but because they stop running the show. Picture what your mind has probably felt like during a season of fear or uncertainty. It is not just that anxious thoughts appear. It is that they multiply, they argue with each other, they construct elaborate scenarios and encounters, they replay conversations and rehearse responses to things that have not even happened yet. Your mind feels like a courtroom with no judge, every voice arguing at once, no one with the authority to call the room to order. This is mental warfare, and it is genuinely exhausting. Often more exhausting than any physical labor, because it never clocks out. It is there when you wake up, and there when you try to sleep. What changes as trust becomes a practiced reality is not that the courtroom empties out, it is that a judge enters the room. there begins to be an internal authority, a settled center that does not require every thought to be silenced in order to remain calm. This is the quiet that Scripture points to, not the quiet of a vacant mind, but the quiet of a governed one. God is not asking you to stop thinking. He is offering to be the authority your thoughts answer to, so that when fear rises and starts making its case, there is something steadier in you that does not have to be persuaded by every argument fear presents. This reframes what spiritual growth in this area actually looks like. It is not about achieving a mind free of anxious thoughts. It is about developing the capacity to notice those thoughts without being immediately governed by them. There is real practical hope in this distinction, because it means you do not have to wait until your mind is perfectly silent before you can call yourself someone with a quiet, trusting heart. You only need to begin practicing this internal redirection consistently, even while the noise is still present, even while the thoughts still show up uninvited. Here's a simple way to begin practicing this kind of governed quiet. When an anxious or catastrophic thought arises, rather than trying to forcibly silence it or shame yourself for having it, try gently catching it the way you might catch a child mid-sentence. Not harshly, but with calm authority. Internally, say something like, "I see this thought, and I am not going to follow it all the way down right now." Then choose one small, true anchor to return to. This could be a simple phrase, such as "God is present in this," or "I am not facing this alone," or "This feeling is not the final word." You are not erasing the thought. You are refusing to let it run the courtroom unchallenged. And the most important part of this practice is that it does not need to feel triumphant to be effective. You can do this while your hands are still shaking. You can do this while your stomach is still in knots. The redirection is the practice, not the absence of difficulty. Over time, something begins to shift, not all at once, but cumulatively, the way muscle is built, through repeated small efforts rather than a single dramatic event. The mind that used to spiral uncontrolled for an hour might now spiral for 10 minutes before the anchor is remembered. The thought that used to consume an entire afternoon might now be caught within moments. This is not failure simply because it is not instant. This is what renewal actually looks like: slow, repeated, and quietly cumulative. There is an emotional weight here worth naming, honestly. The exhaustion of constant mental warfare is real, and if you have been living inside it for a long time, you might feel a kind of grief at how much energy it has cost you. How many hours have been spent rehearsing futures that never happen? How much joy in the present moment has been quietly stolen by a mind that would not settle? It is worth letting yourself feel that grief without rushing past it, because acknowledging what this battle has cost you is part of healing from it. But alongside that grief, there can be a real and growing relief. The relief of realizing you are not failing every time a thought shows up. You are not required to have a mind that never wanders into fear. You are only invited to practice returning again and again to a steadier center. And that steadier center is available to you even now, even in this very moment. While you watch this, this is the first movement of what truly trusting God begins to produce. A mind that is not empty, but increasingly governed, increasingly willing to let one true voice carry more weight than the noisy multitude of anxious ones. But notice what this naturally begins to expose. A quieter mind starts to reveal something underneath it, something that has been driving so much of the anxious noise in the first place. Because if your mind has been so loud for so long, it is worth asking why. What has it been trying to do? All that thinking, all that mental rehearsal, all those constructed scenarios. In most cases, the loud mind has been trying to do one specific job. A job it was never actually equipped to do. It has been trying to control outcomes it has no power over. And as the mind begins to quiet down, that deeper pattern becomes impossible to ignore. What happens to the grip you have been holding on to? Once you start to see how exhausting it has been to hold it, there is a reason your mind has been working so hard, running scenarios, rehearsing outcomes, constructing contingency plans for situations that have not even happened yet. Underneath all that mental noise is a job your mind has unconsciously taken on. A job that feels responsible and even necessary, but that was never actually yours to carry. That job is control. Somewhere along the way, you started believing that if you just think about something hard enough, long enough, from enough angles, you might be able to prevent the worst outcome from happening. You started equating mental effort with actual influence over the future. And the exhausting truth is that none of that thinking has ever changed an outcome. It has only changed how tired you feel while waiting for the outcome to arrive. This is worth sitting with, honestly, because the need to control is rarely about arrogance. It is almost always about fear. You are not gripping the details of your life because you think you are God. You are gripping them because somewhere inside you believes that if you let go, even for a moment, something terrible might happen that you could have prevented had you just stayed vigilant enough. Control, in this sense, is not a character flaw. It is a coping mechanism, a way of trying to create safety in an environment that feels deeply uncertain. But here is the cause that often goes unspoken. The energy required to maintain that level of control is enormous, and it is energy that never actually produces the safety it promises. You can feel exhausted from gripping something tightly for years, and still find that the thing you feared either happened anyway or never happened at all. And either way, the grip itself added nothing but weariness. The biblical perspective on this is not a call to passivity. And this distinction matters deeply because many people hear the word surrender and assume it means doing nothing, disengaging from life, becoming careless about decisions and responsibilities. That is not what surrender means here. Surrender means releasing the illusion that you were ever the one ultimately holding things together. It means continuing to show up, to make wise decisions, to plan and act and engage with your life fully, while no longer carrying the crushing belief that the outcome rests entirely on your ability to manage every variable. You can prepare for a job interview without needing to control how the interviewer responds. You can have a hard conversation with someone you love without needing to control how they receive it. Surrender loosens the grip on outcomes, not the engagement with life itself. This naturally connects to something else that has probably felt just as exhausting as the need for control, and that is waiting. If control is the attempt to manage the future, waiting is what happens when you cannot manage it any further, when you have done what you can do and now there is nothing left but time and silence. For many people, this silence becomes unbearable, not because waiting itself is inherently unbearable, but because silence gets misinterpreted. When you pray and nothing visibly changes, when you ask for direction and none seems to arrive, it is easy to internalize that silence as rejection, as if God's lack of an obvious response means He has stepped back, or worse, that He is displeased with you, or that He has simply not heard you at all. But what if the silence you are interpreting as absence is actually evidence of work happening in a place you simply cannot see yet? Think about how much of any meaningful process happens beneath the surface before anything visible appears. A seed does not show signs of life for weeks while it is doing the most important work of its entire existence underground. The absence of visible movement is not the same as the absence of movement. Waiting, biblically understood, is rarely empty time. It is frequently the exact space where deep, unseen reshaping is taking place, the kind of reshaping that could not happen if the answer arrived too quickly. This does not erase how hard waiting actually feels. It is one thing to understand this conceptually and another to live inside an unanswered prayer for months, sometimes years, watching circumstances stay exactly the same, while your patience wears thin and your hope grows quieter by the week. The ache of unanswered waiting is real, and it deserves to be acknowledged rather than spiritualized away. But within that ache, there is room to begin shifting the interpretation. From silence meaning rejection to silence meaning the process simply has not surfaced yet. Here is a practical way to begin practicing this loosened grip. Choose one specific area of your life right now where you know you have been holding on too tightly, replaying it mentally, trying to control how it unfolds. It might be a relationship, a financial situation, a health concern, a decision about your future. Instead of trying to release it all at once, which often feels impossible, try a smaller act. Write down or speak aloud one sentence, acknowledging what you do not control in that situation. Something like, I do not control how they respond to me, or I do not control the outcome of this diagnosis, or I do not control when this season will end. This is not resignation. It is honesty, and honesty is often the first crack in a grip that has been clenched for far too long. There is something tender worth naming here. Letting go of control can feel like fear at first. not relief. You might expect that releasing your grip will bring instant lightness, but often what comes first is a kind of vulnerability, a sense of exposure, because you are no longer holding the illusion of being the one steering everything. This is normal. This is not evidence that surrender is wrong. It is evidence that surrender is real, because anything that costs nothing was never actually being held tightly to begin with. And yet, underneath that initial vulnerability, something unexpected does eventually emerge. A lightness that was not available while the grip remained closed. Not because the uncertainty disappears, but because you are no longer carrying it the same way. This raises an important question worth holding on to as we continue. If God truly is working in the unseen places, in the waiting, in the silence that has felt so heavy, why does it still feel like nothing is happening? Why does the underground work, if it is real, feel so indistinguishable from absence? That tension deserves a real answer, and we are going to walk directly into it. Before we walk further into that tension, there is another layer beneath the grip you have been loosening. Something that explains why letting go has felt so much like losing a part of yourself. For a long time, you have probably operated from a quiet, unspoken belief that you are the one who has to figure everything out. You are the one who has to be strong enough, capable enough, prepared enough, so that nothing catches you off guard and no one else has to carry your weight. This belief often masquerades as responsibility, even as virtue. People may have praised you for it. You might have built your entire identity around being the dependable one, the one who handles things, the one who does not fall apart. But underneath that identity is often something far more fragile than strength. It is exhaustion wearing the costume of competence. Self-reliance feels safe because it gives you a sense of agency. If you can manage everything yourself, you do not have to risk depending on someone else, even God, and being let down. But this kind of independence comes at a cost that rarely gets named out loud. It is profoundly isolating when you believe the entire weight of your life rests on your own shoulders. You cannot truly rest, because rest implies trusting something or someone else to hold what you have set down. And if there is no one you trust enough to set it down with, then there is no real rest available to you. Only different forms of exhaustion dressed up as control. Many believers carry a quiet shame around this exact issue. There is an unspoken sense that needing to depend on God for daily strengths, for daily direction, for daily peace, means there is something deficient about them. Other people seem to handle life so well, seem so put together, and the idea of admitting I cannot do this on my own feels like failure rather than honesty. But here is where the biblical perspective offers something countercultural to almost everything you have been taught about strength and capability. Dependence on God was never meant to be a sign of weakness or immaturity. It was the original design, before there was ever a fall, before there was ever brokenness in the world. Human beings were created to walk in continual reliance on their Creator, not as a consequence of failure, but as the natural posture of being made by Him and for Him. This means the goal was never to reach a point of such spiritual maturity that you no longer need God moment to moment. That misunderstanding has likely fueled a great deal of your private shame. The goal, instead, is to recognize that your need for Him is not evidence of deficiency. It is evidence of being exactly what you were made to be. A creature designed to live in ongoing relationship with the one who sustains you, rather than a self-sufficient machine expected to run on its own power indefinitely. There is practical work involved in shifting this internal language, because old patterns of self-reliance do not dissolve simply because you intellectually understand a new truth. It requires a deliberate, repeated replacement of the phrases that have been running quietly through your mind for years. Instead of the internal refrain, "I have to figure this out myself," try gently replacing it, even if it feels awkward at first, with something like, "I am allowed to need help, and I am not alone in this." Say it even when it does not feel true yet. Say it, especially when it does not feel true yet. Because new internal language often precedes new internal belief, not the other way around. You do not have to feel dependent in order to begin practicing dependence. You simply have to start interrupting the old script with a new one, again and again, the same way you have been practicing redirecting anxious thoughts. There is a particular kind of relief available here. one that might surprise you if you have spent years believing that strength means carrying everything alone. The relief is in realizing you were never actually equipped to be your own provider, your own protector, your own source of constant wisdom and foresight. That role was never assigned to you, even though you may have quietly taken it on without realizing what it was costing you. Laying down that impossible role is not failure. It is the recovery of a weight you were never designed to carry in the first place. Here's the deeper revelation hidden inside this shift, one worth letting settle for a moment. What felt like independence, what felt like strength and self-sufficiency, was never actually freedom. It was isolation, quietly mistaken for resilience. Real strength was never about needing no one. It was always meant to be found in the willingness to depend on the one who is actually capable of holding what you cannot. There is no shame in this. There is only relief. The kind of relief that comes from finally setting down something heavy you had convinced yourself you were supposed to carry alone. This shift in identity from self-reliance to dependence naturally begins to change how you relate to the future. Because if you are no longer trying to be your own source of provision and protection, the future stops feeling like something you alone are responsible for securing. But this raises an important question, one that deserves careful attention rather than a quick spiritual answer. If dependence on God is the goal, if needing Him is not weakness but design, what does that actually change about the future you have been so afraid of? Does dependence mean the uncertain things you fear simply will not happen? Or is something else being offered here? Something less about removing the unknown and more about who you are facing it with? That distinction is where everything is about to come into focus. Here's something worth noticing. Now that you have walked this far, underneath so much of the fear you carry, there has often been a quiet sense of lost direction, a feeling that you do not know what you are supposed to be doing with your life, your relationships, your decisions. You might have assumed this confusion is simply a separate problem from your anxiety. Something unrelated that just happens to be bothering you at the same time. But these two things are far more connected than they appear. Fear does not just make you anxious, it clouds your ability to see clearly. A mind consumed with managing worst-case scenarios has very little capacity left to discern direction, because all of its energy is being spent on defense rather than discovery. This means that much of the confusion you have felt about your purpose, your next steps, your sense of calling, may not be the result of God withholding clarity from you. It may be the natural consequence of fear taking up so much space that clarity simply could not get through. As trust becomes a practiced reality, as the mind quiets, as the grip on control loosens, as dependence replaces self-reliance, something begins to surface that fear had been obscuring all along. This is not because trust magically produces a 5-year plan or a perfectly mapped out future. It is because a mind no longer consumed by fear has room to notice things it could not notice before. You start to see the quiet pull toward something you had ignored for years. You start to recognize the patterns in your own life that point toward a particular direction. You start to hear what may have been there all along, simply drowned out by the volume of your own anxious noise. This brings us to the turning point of everything we have been walking through, the realization that changes the entire shape of this journey. For a long time, you may have believed that trust was meant to remove uncertainty, that if your faith were strong enough, the unknown would dissolve, the future would become clear, the outcomes would resolve in your favor, and the fear would simply have no more reason to exist. But this was never the actual promise. Trust was never meant to eliminate the unknown. It was meant to change your relationship to it. The uncertain parts of your life may remain genuinely uncertain. The diagnosis may still be unclear. The relationship may still be unresolved. The future may still be but the way you carry that uncertainty becomes fundamentally different. Not because the uncertainty itself has changed, but because you are no longer carrying it the same way or alone. This reframes the silence you have felt for so long, the silence you interpreted as God's absence or rejection. God was never silent in the way you feared. He was working beneath what could be seen, in places your eyes were not yet able to access, shaping things that had not yet surfaced into visible form. This is not a comfortable truth to sit with when you are in the middle of waiting, because it asks you to trust a process you cannot verify with your senses. But this is precisely where faith operates, beneath the visible, beneath beneath what can be measured or confirmed in the moment. Clarity, more often than not, arrives after surrender, not before it. This order matters. Most people want the clarity first, and then they will surrender. But the biblical pattern moves the other direction. Surrender often becomes the very space in which clarity is finally able to form. Here is something practical worth reflecting on. Think back to a season in your life that felt confusing or painful at the time. A season where you could not see what purpose it served while you were inside it. Now, with the distance of time, can you see anything that grew out of that season that you could not have seen while you were living through it? Perhaps a strength you developed, a relationship that deepened, a perspective you gained that you would not trade for anything, even though you would never have chosen that season willingly. This is not a coincidence specific to that one chapter of your life. It is a pattern, one that reveals itself only in hindsight, because growth beneath the surface is rarely visible while it is happening. The same pattern is almost certainly active in whatever you are facing right now, even though you cannot yet see its shape. This invites a shift in how you relate to your current waiting. Instead of demanding an answer before you will trust the process, what would it look like to extend the same patience to this present season that you can now see, in hindsight, was warranted in past seasons? This does not mean suppressing your desire for clarity or pretending the waiting does not hurt. It means holding the waiting with open hands rather than clenched ones, trusting that the absence of a visible answer does not mean the absence of movement. There is an emotional weight to this shift that deserves acknowledgement. Letting go of the demand for immediate answers can feel like losing your grip on the only thing that gave you a sense of control over your own waiting. But what replaces that demand, slowly, is something steadier than answers ever provided. It is the capacity to trust the one who holds the answers even while you remain without them. This is a different kind of peace than the peace of having things figured out. It is the peace of being held by someone trustworthy while things remain unfigured. This leaves one essential question remaining, the one that brings everything full circle to where we began. If uncertainty does not disappear, if waiting may still continue, if the unknown remains genuinely unknown for a while longer, what does it actually look like to carry that uncertainty without being crushed beneath it? This is not a hypothetical question. It is the exact question your life has been asking for as long as you can remember feeling this particular kind of tired. And it is the question we are finally going to answer directly, because the answer is closer and simpler than you might expect. You began this with a simple but piercing question. What actually changes when trusting God becomes real? Not just something you say, but something your whole being begins to live from. You have walked through the mind growing quieter, not empty, but increasingly governed by something steadier than the noise of fear. You have walked through the grip of control loosening, not because life became more predictable, but because you stopped pretending you were ever the one holding it all together. You have walked through the long ache of waiting, learning to interpret silence, not as rejection, but a space where something unseen is being shaped. You have walked through the quiet shame of needing to depend on someone else, discovering that dependence was never weakness, but the very design you were created for. And you have walked through the fog of fear lifting just enough to reveal a direction that was there all along, simply waiting for room to surface. Now we arrive at the question you have been carrying since the very beginning, the one underneath all the anxious nights and all the white-knuckled prayers. What does it actually look like to carry uncertainty without being crushed beneath it? Here is the answer, and it is simpler than you expected. Though simple does not mean easy. You do not carry it alone. That is the entire shift. Trust was never meant to remove the unknown from your life. It was meant to change who carries it with you. The diagnosis may still be unclear. The relationship may still be unresolved. The timeline may still be unknown. But you are no longer facing any of it from the isolated, exhausted posture of someone who believes the weight rests entirely on their own shoulders. You are facing it as someone who has practiced day after day, returning their mind to a steadier voice, loosening their grip one small surrender at a time, and learning that being dependent on God is not a failure of strength, but the recovery of how you were always meant to live. This is what trust actually does. It does not promise you a future free of difficulty. It does not promise that every fear you have named will fail to come true. What he promises is a different relationship to whatever comes, a mind that can be afraid and still return to truth, a heart that can grieve and still remain anchored, a life that can hold real uncertainty without collapsing under its weight, because the weight is no longer being carried by you alone. This is the quiet strength so many people of faith eventually arrive at, not the absence of struggle, but a steadier way of standing inside it. If you go back to where you started, lying awake, replaying worst-case scenarios, saying the words, "I trust you, God," while your body still reacted in fear, you can now see that the gap between your confession and your feeling was never the problem you thought it was. It was simply the space where faith had not yet been practiced into posture. That gap is not evidence that your faith failed. It is the very place where trust grows, slowly, through repetition, through small redirect, through choosing dependence over self-reliance, again and again, until it stops feeling like such a battle and starts feeling like home. You may still feel afraid sometimes. That is not a contradiction to everything we have walked through together. Fear rising is not the opposite of trust. Remember, what you do with it is where trust lives. So when fear shows up again, and it will, you will not need to wonder if your faith has failed. You will recognize it for what it is, a familiar visitor, and you will know what to do. You will notice it. You will name it. You will return your mind to one true thing about God, even if you do not feel it yet. And that return, practiced quietly and faithfully over time, is what trust actually looks like, far more than any singular emotional breakthrough you might have been waiting for. The shift from fear to trust does not happen all at once, and it may not feel dramatic when it happens. It will likely look like a slightly steadier morning, a slightly softer grip on a conversation you were dreading, a slightly quieter mind at 2 in the morning when it used to spiral for hours and now settles after a few minutes. The shift from confusion to clarity may not arrive as a sudden epiphany, but as a quiet recognition months from now. When you look back and realize you can finally see the shape of something that felt completely formless while you were living inside it. And the shift from heaviness to peace may not feel like triumph. It may simply feel like being able to breathe a little deeper, like setting something down you did not realize you were still holding. This is enough. You do not need a dramatic transformation to know that something real is happening in you. You only need to notice the small, quiet movements, the redirected thought, the loosened grip, the honest prayer, admitting you do not feel like you trust Him right now, but choosing to anyway. These small movements, repeated faithfully, are what trust is built from, and they are already available to you. Starting now, in this very moment, whatever you are facing tonight. If this has met you somewhere true, somewhere you have been quietly struggling without knowing how to name it, take a moment to sit with that before you move on with your day. You do not need to have this all figured out. You only need to take the next small step, the next redirected thought, the next loosened grip, the next honest prayer. If this video gave you language for something you have been carrying for a long time, consider leaving a comment about which part met you most. It helps others walking through the same season find their way here too. If you found this meaningful, a like and a subscribe helps this message reach someone else who is lying awake tonight, wondering if their faith is even working. You were never asked to remove the unknown from your life. You were only asked to stop carrying it alone.